All right, this is my audience for speech 1301 for the report or discussion I'll be giving. My live audience there. Do some minor adjustments real quick. All right, and next I have real quick is, which I will have to submit, is my outline, my citations, and it also said to print this grading scale here. I'm not exactly sure, but I do have it printed. All right, now we'll get into the speech that I'm going to do today for 1311 is the class. And today I'm going to be talking about the Great Chicago Fire, also known as the Great Fire. So does anyone know about the Great Chicago Fire? No, that's why I'm here to discuss it. Okay. So it happened back in October 8th through the 10th back in 1871. Fire lasted 3 days. So just a brief what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the fire, how it started, and what the outcome was, and then the last thing, how it's impacted the fire service today. So again, the fire was back in 1871 of October 8th through the 10th, and the fire was started by a cow. A lot of people don't believe that. They think it was a meteorite. It was actually a cow that knocked over a lantern in a barn. So the barn caught fire, and it destroyed over 17,000 structures it was, left 100,000 people homeless, and it killed 300. The cost and damages was $2 billion. This is a slide or photo from a cow that they, I guess, mocked from the fire. Obviously, again, it was a cow that started the fire, which a lot of people don't believe, but again, they say it was something else. Again, back then there wasn't arson investigators, things like that. Fire departments were pretty much like bucket brigades, and again, there wasn't codes and life safety and all that. In talking about this fire when it happened, which leads me into my next, which will show the district that it burned. So this is a slide of the district, all this area that was burned, as you can see from the Great Windy City, as it said. It was a mile wide and over 4 miles long that it burned, this fire. So you can imagine it burned for 3 days. Again, 300 people were killed, plus the cow, unfortunately. And $2 billion in damage. So again, this is kind of the district of it. So after that, back in 1896 is when the impact of the fire code and sprinklers and everything else started coming into play. So that's another thing is that now with the fire safety, so we have Sparky there. Everybody's pretty familiar with Sparky. So if you notice, every month, every year in October, the second week normally is Fire Prevention Week. And Fire Prevention Week obviously started because of the Great Fire of Chicago, again, also known as the Great Fire. So both names associate with it. So we have Fire Prevention Week, and also with that, we also now have fire and life safety educators and fire prevention, which I happen to be a fire life safety educator 1 for the Bexar County Fire Marshal's Office. It is a cert that recently a few of us in the office have just received. In conclusion of the Great Chicago Fire, we talked about how the fire started. We talked about some things that came from it. And lastly, in the conclusion, was Fire Prevention Week and the fire codes that it brought. And lastly was the importance of the NFPA 13, 13D, and 13R, the sprinkler systems, which again are always the dreaded thing for business owners when they have to install these. But again, when this fire started, sprinklers weren't invented. The materials that were used, curtains were not fire rated, walls, the paint, all that actually plays a role. And again, these people were not educated. So again, that's our job as fire and life safety educators, is to educate the public and code enforcement. And then of course now we also have arson investigators that investigate fires if they're suspicious and things like that. So this is again my speech on the Great Chicago Fire. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and thank you for attending.